$140,000. That's how much the F-150 Lightning I test drove cost. But how are you doing today, Justice? You doing fine?
I feel like I'm $140,000 too poor to drive that.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I'm doing really well.
Well, today, Justice, you and I are going to touch on a number of topics. We're going to talk about how Toyota and its partner Subaru really need to get their act together, selling their first mainstream mass-produced electric vehicles, because the stop sale has been going on for too long. But we will dig into that. Also, plenty of other news from this week that I'm really excited we're going to get into. I'd say today is going to be a weekly news roundup with a bit of an emphasis on Toyota and Subaru. I'm going to start it out with something positive for the viewers because everybody wants to get their weekend off to a good start, I'd imagine. Any Fisker lovers out there? Let us know in the chat. Let us know if you're interested in Fisker. I'm interested in Fisker. The only reason I kind of gave up on that was because I don't see a Fisker service center being anywhere near where I live anytime soon. But I'm a big fan of Fisker and what they say they're going to offer in the Fisker Ocean electric SUV. They have started series production. The first vehicle was produced at the Magna plant in Austria that will be delivered to a customer. So that is awesome. Great news from Fisker. And it really looks like, I mean, it might not be great for the consumer right now if you're interested in an Ioniq 5 or EV6, for example, but the new US EV federal tax credit seems to be working at least on the corporate level. Because now the manufacturer that makes the Fisker Ocean, Magna, they also produce vehicles for Jaguar and Mercedes-Benz, BMW, and a bunch of others. They're a car maker. They're now saying publicly that they're looking at building a plant here in the U.S. Justice, interestingly enough, the executive over at Magna said they have ruled out California.
Well, yeah, that doesn't surprise almost
Yeah.
anybody from California, at least. E-
Yeah.
Even Tesla picked up and took off, right? I mean, but as long as they're coming to the United States, that's great. They don't have to come to the great state of California. We got lots of other business.
Yeah, and Magna's vice president, Kurt Bachmeier, told automotive news affiliate Automobilwirtschaft in Germany that, quote, they want to enter the U.S. market and they are intensively looking for a location right now. And then he went on to say that the company is looking at areas that have suitably qualified employees, access to suppliers, and plenty of space. And then they noted they want a sunny or windy site to be able to generate sustainable electricity on site. You know what I'm going to go out there on a limb and say is that they're going to pick the southeastern U.S. just like Hyundai recently
Yeah.
has, and VinFast, Toyota's new battery plant, Rivian, the southeastern U.S. Plenty of sun here. Yeah, I bet that's where they're going to end up. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's almost a given that that's where everyone is, and just like how Silicon Valley started, um, everyone groups together because that's where parts and materials and groups are. So of course they're going to group together in the southeast. It just makes sense. From a logic standpoint.
And there's some big old battery factories beginning construction in Georgia, I believe South Carolina, Tennessee. So the Southeast is also, as you said, it's getting that whole
Yeah.
supply chain for the development of EVs. That's pretty exciting. I technically live in the Southeast, but I live high up in the mountains where it's cloudy all the time. So I don't think they'd want to come up here. But I like being in my little mountain hideaway. Some other good news is on a personal note, I test drove the F-150 Lightning. It was a Platinum edition. I had never been in any F-150 Lightning Platinum before. I'd been in the XLTs or whatever. Work trucks. That's what I was more familiar with. Wow, I did not know this truck was so luxurious, but the price tag kind of pissed me off. It was $140,000 with a 40-something thousand dollar additional dealer markup. They did not hide it. It was right there on the price tag. ADM 40-something thousand plus. Now the salesperson who was helping me out, he was very nice, and this is in small town America. Okay, this is a town of like 20,000 people, 3 hours from the nearest major airport. He, as a salesperson, he was very excited about Ford's electrification strategies. And if anyone was tuning into yesterday's Ray and Zach show, I was on there with Ray talking about how I actually asked the sales manager and the salesperson what they thought about Ford's latest announcement that all dealers have to decide if they want to continue to sell EVs in just like 45 days by October 31st. That's a short timeline, but they quipped, like he joked, at least they're giving us a choice, right? But in all honesty, it's just an absurd timeline. Justice, what was your first reaction to that Ford news? I wasn't really surprised. I was only surprised by the timeline.
Yeah, the timeline's surprising, but I mean, the whole thing doesn't surprise me at all. This is the way Ford wants to go. Ford wants to do direct to consumer. And so they're sort of working their little ways around on how to do that and still abide by dealer laws.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this will be fought, obviously, by lots of dealers. Um, so we'll see where it goes. I mean, this is all going to end up in court. I've said that
Yeah.
for a long time.
You're right.
This all just ends up in court, and this is how this finally gets settled out. So, I mean, the time frame seems weird that they would make it that quick. I don't know why people need to decide, before January 1st, give them the rest of the year at least. It doesn't make any sense. I'm glad you got to try the F-150 Lightning. I have still never seen one in person. I
It,
go EVs all the time. I've never seen an F-150 Lightning.
yeah, that might say something about the California market versus the West Virginia market for trucks, but it drove wonderfully. I mean, it was strange because it really drove like an electric crossover, maybe the Model Y, the Ioniq 5 that I drive. However, you're in a massive truck and slamming the pedal, I think it was sub 5 second 0 to 60 time. It did not feel like it. It was weird. It was like playing physics tricks on me or something because I did not feel any G forces. I was not pushed back in the seat like I am.
Oh,
Well, I felt a little bit, but it was weird. Really putting the pedal to the metal in the Tesla or the Ioniq 5 or the Mustang Mach-E that I test drove. I felt like the acceleration was a lot more violent. But in the F-150 Lightning, it really felt like they had tuned it to be a comfortable, quick vehicle that will still shred through tires in 20,000 miles. But hey, you can afford tires infinitely if you can afford a $140,000 truck, right?
wow. I mean, maybe.
Yeah, it's not good for the environment to burn through tires like that.
No.
Um, Yeah, so other good news. Thank you, Learning Fast, in the chat for bringing this up. VinFast has started delivering its first VF8 electric vehicles in Vietnam, with it looking like U.S. cars could start shipping by the end of the year. Thank you for sharing that, Learning Fast. I didn't know that they might get to the U.S. within just a few months. That is interesting. VinFast is building a giant factory in Chatham County, North Carolina. So they've got that factory in that county and also a new semiconductor chip facility has been announced for the same county. It's about $10 billion in investment in one North Carolina county announced in just a few months. That's wild. That is a lot of money. Going to be some new millionaire row around there in the neighborhoods. We'll see.
But it's great news. I mean, I love
Yes.
the investment. Love that it's all coming. Love that they're starting to come to fruition for a lot of these companies finally.
Yeah, I'm excited about it as well. And before we go any further and talk about this Toyota and Subaru stuff, which got to remind you guys, we in my household, we own a Subaru. We own a Subaru Forester, and my wife was looking pretty hard at the Subaru Solterra. So I'm excited to talk about that in a few minutes, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to share a new resource with you guys, and I am going to add to it right after the show because Justice has helped me improve this resource. The best EVs under $50,000. Now, I'm going to show you the list very briefly, and I'd love to hear your feedback. I will say the Model 3 rear-wheel drive is going to be added to this because there's no markup. I mean, it's solidly under 50,000. So thank you for reminding me that, Justice. I was just so used to being disappointed by the $57,000 all-wheel drive Model 3.
Yeah.
Mustang Mach-E, it's hard to find one. I mean, under this price point, I've seen some for like 48,000, but I am going to add it to the list. But here's what I had: Volkswagen ID4, Chevy Bolt, Hyundai Kona, Kia Niro, Kia EV6 base trim, and Ioniq 5 base trim. I also talked about the Equinox EV. But yeah, the Model 3 definitely belongs on this list. If you guys are looking for the most critical specs for the EVs available under 50 grand, check out this resource at our blog at joinyaa.com. We've got charging times, charging speeds, range, price ranges, and availability info, in addition to whether or not that model qualifies for the tax credit. And that is very, very important. So check that out on joinyaa.com.
And not including dealer markup.
Yes, yes. Oh man, and that's why I
Yeah,
hesitated to even put the Ioniq 5 and EV6 on there, but I have seen some SE trim levels in the EV6. Is it called the Light? Light? I think it's called Light. That's like the base
I
trim.
don't know. I
Yeah. They've got a weird naming scheme. There's Light, Wind, GT, and something else. But yeah,
sure.
we're
Okay.
gonna make we're gonna make this list better. I guess everybody should just go alphanumeric, right?
I like Rivian's way of numbering their vehicles. I think those are great.
Jim, this is pretty cool news in the chat.
Nice.
Jim's got a 2023 Lightning Pro scheduled for production in about a month. That is exciting. Jim, let us know in the chat if you want to. Were you able to get the dealer to commit to MSRP? It looks like, yeah,
Oh,
looks like he did. MSRP. Interesting. I'm not quite sure what he means by $7,000 private offer to keep at 22 pricing. Do you know, Justice?
I don't know.
Yeah, if you want to let us know, Jim, what does that $7,000 private offer mean?
So they're
Interesting.
yeah. So they're keeping up the 2022 price, and that's amazing as
Yeah.
well. I mean, that's because there was the $7,000 is what the markup is, the
Oh,
new
okay.
MSRP. So I get that part of it. I don't know what private offer means, but yeah. So that's fantastic, and finding one at MSRP, even the new MSRP would be great.
Yeah. Now, with the big Ford news, one more thing to mention about that is in addition to offering dealers, first of all, do you want to sell EVs in the future or not? Well, if they say yes, they have to choose between Model E Elite, which is basically a $1.2 million investment that the dealer has to make, or Model E Certified, which is about $500,000. In addition to that news, they're going to require Ford's EV sellers to offer, quote, no haggle pricing. That's how they put it. So that would be interesting to see if that ends up being one of the keys to success for the F-150 Lightning long term, is if you can actually find a pro. Let's talk 2024 pricing. I'm just going to guess. If you could find an F-150 Lightning Pro for $45,000, that would be an amazing value, in my opinion.
Yeah, but no haggle pricing.
You could, does that mean
Oh,
you could just
nice.
set the price?
Yeah, that's what I want to know. I want to know what the price on the no haggle is. Does that mean it's MSRP or like a dock fee? Does the dealer have to charge the same markup to every customer?
Yeah, we will find out the hard way, I guess. Yeah, we'll see. Maybe we'll get some more useless memos at some point in time.
I still say those memos are not useless.
Okay.
People are just misunderstanding them. They're
Okay.
not meant for the dealers to follow. They're meant for the court cases to follow.
Nice. Yeah, you should
They
just
are
become a lawyer. What are you doing
they
here,
are
Justice?
for
Be a lawyer.
Ford to go, hey, we gave all these chances, we gave all these guidelines, they didn't follow.
Now, I'm going to side with Learning Fast in the chat, who says, so Ford can raise MSRPs, but dealers can't charge more. That's where I'm at. I mean, that's what we're already seeing. The Mustang Mach-E has seen $3,000 to $8,000 price increases in the past few months. But yeah, let's move on. I want to talk Toyota and Subaru. It's something I'm kind of fired up about and a bit disappointed about. And then maybe we can wrap the show up with some Tesla news. It looks like more battery production might be coming to the US, and there's a new lawsuit.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I know you don't want to talk about it, but we're going to. So,
Oh, well, we can talk about it, but please.
yeah. I wouldn't want to pay $15,000 for that, but anyways. Where should we start with this Toyota Subaru nonsense? Because even though I trashed the BZ4X for its slow charging And with the all-wheel drive trim, very poor range for a 2023 model. I want them to succeed.
Especially when the wheels fall off.
Yes, yes,
It
I
gets
want
very
them
little
to
range.
succeed. Yeah, oof. Um, they recalled and stop sailed the BZ4X and its sibling, platform sibling, the Subaru Solterra, before they were delivered to customers. It affected 2,100 EVs, actually 2,100 BZ4Xs, not sure how many Solterras that had already been produced. None of them have arrived in customers' hands, as to my knowledge, but perhaps a few have because Toyota also offered to buy back any that had been sold. So it was right at that critical point where they were literally going on sale, like within that week. They immediately issued the recall and stop sale. And that was early August. I'm sorry, the recall was issued in late June, but early August was the last update we had, and there's still just a stop sale. Why am I so fired up about this? Because this is their big chance to enter the realm of EV market share right when Americans are looking into going electric. I mean, they already missed out on the huge spike in Google search engine traffic we saw with EVs when gas prices were at $5 a gallon. They already missed out on that. Now I feel like when the stop sale is over and BZ4Xs and Solterras can actually be purchased by consumers, they're going to have to consider somehow offering more competitive pricing in order to get it off the ground because I feel like their image is a little bit tarnished. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to do a lot of damage control over this when it finally does come out, just because it's been such a nightmare and there's no updates. So you said since August we haven't had any updates. There's I know people were supposed to take delivery back in February they were supposed to start
No, I don't think
some,
it was quite
and
that early.
wasn't that
It
early?
was
Somewhere.
early summer,
Okay.
and
And
that's right
then
when the recall happened.
yeah. So I mean if this gets into, obviously at this point we think it's going to get into 2023. So there's going to have to be a lot of damage control and a lot of explaining why you should buy the vehicles.
Yeah. Um, something that comes to mind is the fact that maybe we'll see some heavily discounted 2022 BZ4Xs like in the middle of 2023, but there I guess there'd only be a few thousand of them, so I don't know. Probably
But
will.
that could work. I mean, that
Yeah.
could be, they need to phrase this as the long awaited return kind of thing
Yeah.
to be able to get through this.
Yeah, the more I've learned about the BZ4X, I've kind of had a lot of clarity come into vision with what I think about it, at least personally. The front wheel drive powertrain option for the BZ4X, it gets decent range, like really good range, about 250 on the charge. And its charging capabilities are better at a 150 kilowatt max output. I'm sorry, that's the max that it can accept. Now that's interesting because the front wheel drive variant has a completely different battery source than the all-wheel drive variant. So the all-wheel drive variant is something from CATL. I'm not quite sure where the front wheel drive variant has sourced their batteries, but that is why the charging capabilities and range are so vastly different. All-wheel drive can always affect range because you're adding the weight of an additional motor. But here we're talking about completely different batteries. And that's why the all-wheel drive BZ4X, it really has, like, I would say 2017 type charging capabilities. It has a max charging speed of 100 kilowatts. That is pretty poor for a 2023 model. So while I think the front wheel drive option might be decent, I would not recommend the all wheel drive option to anyone who travels because, especially if you have kids like I do, I have a 6-year old. I wouldn't want to sit around in a charger for literally 50 minutes to gain maybe 180 miles of range with a 6-year old sitting in the back. Not to mention thinking about how I probably just spent $45,000 to $50,000 on that vehicle. That's not worth it for me.
Yeah, and all wheel drive, okay, I guess you got the snow country, but for the most part, you think all wheel drive, you think you're going to go somewhere with it. You're not just driving around town. So it seems poorly planned out.
Yeah, and you also have to start thinking about the use cases for an all-wheel drive EV.
Yeah.
It's more than likely going to be a colder region, such as the northern tier of the U.S. or Canada, and not to mention Europe. But in colder regions, we typically see quite a bit of range loss with an EV. So if you've got 220 something miles of EPA rated range with the all-wheel drive BZ4X and Solterra, that's in ideal conditions where the testing was done. What about when it's 15 degrees outside in Chicago or Minnesota? You might be looking at 180 miles of range. And then on top of that, slow charging capabilities for a 2023 model. So I just think if you're looking to spend 45 to $50,000 on an EV, you should really consider, is it future proof or not? And how does it fit to your lifestyle? And in my opinion, that's where the importance of charging comes in.
Well, yeah, and when you say future proof too, it's resale.
Yeah.
How many people are going to want to buy that car in 3 to 5 years, on the used market with those kind of specs to it? It's going to be hard.
Yes. Right now in 2022 and maybe even into 2023, the resale market for EVs like the Bolt, the Leaf, and let's say the BZ4X comes to market, it's continuing to be strong, but I don't expect that to always be the case as more capable competitors make it to market, such as the Equinox EV that I'm so excited about. If GM screws that up, man, I'm going to really be let down.
Yeah, and the Bolton Leaf and stuff are strong-ish, but there's still nothing compared to the Tesla used market.
Yeah. Oh,
And
that's for
and
sure.
that and that shows you something already, that even a used Tesla's going for so much more because it's so much more capable,
Mhm.
and that's already a big deal for people.
Yes, that is true. Speaking of GM, I actually got GM's Instagram account to respond to my message. I asked them if they wanted to have a representative on our show to talk about their EV plans, and they said they're going to pass my message along. So hopefully we can get someone from GM
Nice.
on the show. But Mark here in the chat has a great comment talking about Toyota. Mark says he thinks that they are in full research and development and battery development for battery electric vehicles to surpass comparable models with likely faster charging rates and longer ranges. I don't think range is going to get much beyond 250 because of battery supply shortages that at least I foresee happening in the next few years. But I could see them playing it smart in the long term. And Mark, you are the battery expert. I know you've got plenty of professional experience in that realm. But I've also seen that one of Toyota's executives recently said publicly that they think lithium ion batteries are going to be dominating for this whole decade. And that came less than 6 months after they themselves were talking up how they were leading the development of solid state batteries. So I'm not really seeing a clear direction here. I'm getting some mixed messages from Toyota. I still think that considering how much of a behemoth they are internationally, they've got to pull this around, right? Like they've got to turn this around, but not quite sure how yet.
I think the industry is still so very new that nobody knows where it's going yet, and everyone's looking for the next great technology to help innovate things.
Yeah, that is true. Igor in the chat says he thinks that Toyota will still do okay in sales for the BZ4X because of shortages in Toyota inventory and loyalty of Toyota buyers. I would say if there's one thing I've learned when it comes to the consumer out there and having this podcast and publishing some of the materials and guides that I've published is that Toyota buyers are fiercely loyal, and I did not know they were that loyal. I've even owned a '95 Toyota Avalon back in like 2008, but I didn't know that you could be that loyal to Toyota. But whatever works, whatever
It's
works.
generational. It's passed down in families too. Like
Interesting.
grandfather drove Toyotas, dad drove Toyotas, now son's there. I mean, that's when I work at Toyota, that's what we would get, whole legacy families of, now we only drive Toyota, so here we are.
Yeah. One other vehicle I want to talk about a little bit more is the Solterra because we have a 2015 Forester in our household. It's okay, burns a lot of oil, but all-wheel drive is nice. The Solterra really caught the eye of my wife. She was thinking about upgrading to a Solterra. However, you still can't buy that because of the stop sale. Looks pretty sharp in my opinion. I'll pull an image up for everyone. Justice, do you think that the Solterra has a future, or is it kind of, I almost want to call it like a compliance EV that was not intended to be a compliance EV because we don't hear anything about it these days?
I I think it could have a future. I
I hope
think
it does.
uh, Subaru's also has a very strong, loyal fan base, and it's growing. We see more and more and more in our community and on the chats of people looking for Subaru, and so I think there's a chance for it, but they don't have the built-in. Yeah, we'll give it a shot like Toyota does.
Yeah, I
So that
agree.
there's going to be more. They may be able to play off of where the same, where the sister of the Toyota kind of thing. I don't know, but I hope they do because they're a good company that's um, whose dealers are actually quite nice.
Yeah, yeah, they have a very good reputation out there, I would
Hmm.
say. And we've been happy with our Subaru. Now, here's what concerns me with the Solterra, and I honestly just hope they bring out some pretty quick upgrades for the next model years because this is not good enough for any of our use cases in my family. Uh, 222 miles of range. 222 miles of range in the 20-inch wheel configuration. 228 miles of range with the 18-inch wheels. Check out the charging capabilities. It's the same as the all-wheel drive BZ4X, and really, this is the only big problem I have with the Solterra. But it's a deal breaker for me, and should be if you travel a lot, like I do. Okay, 80% charge takes 56 minutes with 100 kilowatt max DC fast charging. That means in about an hour, you would add 178 miles of range, according to my math. That is not good enough for me. Plain and simple. I don't know. For the
Yeah, I
money.
think,
For the money.
like you said, it's the first foray into it, so I think they were being a little more cautious with it. Um, but I don't think now's the time for OEMs to be cautious with their EVs. I think they need to get out there and set themselves apart real fast, real quick. And, to Ford's credit, I think that's what they're trying to do with their vehicles. I think they're coming out pretty strong in this. So we'll see how everyone else adapts.
Well, even if so, I'm gonna be still a bit more of the devil's advocate here with the Solterra, especially because I am. I'll be honest, I'm quite a Subaru fan. I actually forgot to mention I owned a Legacy back in the day. Uh, I feel like Subaru's invested $2 billion in EVs. $2 billion. This is like kind of a poor result for a $2 billion science experiment. I would hope that it would be a more compelling product with how much money has been funneled into it. But we'll see. We'll see, Justice.
But what is 2 billion in research and development of a normal vehicle?
Mm,
Even, I mean, a lot of that's just what it takes to bring a vehicle to life in the first place, right? So we'll see where they go from here.
yeah, we'll see where
I
they
wish
go.
them nothing but luck because I like I said, dealer wise, they're one of the best dealers out there. Subarus are great.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly think that the Solterra looks good too. I think it looks better than a lot of other options out there right now. And I just want to see some better specs, and maybe my wife would even go buy one like in 2024 if the next model year ends up being more capable. But honestly, at this point, I would just go for an all-wheel drive ID4 made in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's what I would go for if I was in the market for that kind of price range. But keeping my Ionic 5.
Yeah,
Think
the Ioniq 5 is nice. I mean, that's a given. So
yeah. Very, very interesting. And a good question in the chat before we move on to some Tesla news. And Justice, while I go over this, you got to decide, do we want to start with the good Tesla news about moving battery production to the US, or my Tesla news? Think about
I yeah.
that. James in the chat says, how soon do you think solid state will take over lithium? Well, Toyota previously said 2025 they'd introduce it in a plug-in hybrid. They'd be the first major automaker to do so. BMW is also pretty deep into solid-state batteries. However, like I said, about 6 months later, an executive at Toyota said they expect liquid-based electrolytes to continue to dominate for the rest of this decade. And the reasoning was very interesting. And I think this is something we should all keep in mind if we're interested in EVs and even if we're skeptical. The pace of innovation in the liquid electrolyte lithium ion batteries is really accelerating. So think of how much the combustion engine changed between, I don't know, 1990 and 2010. Okay. It changed a lot. We got a lot more efficiency. Think of how much the lithium ion battery technologies could be innovated and improved in the next decade. I mean, that's what Toyota's saying. So we don't know is the answer, but it looks like lithium ion batteries with a liquid electrolyte will be around longer than we might have expected.
Well, and as I keep saying too, you don't spend $10 billion to get a lithium mine online and then
Yeah.
go, oh, we're going to switch technologies now.
Yeah.
That that's just not going to happen.
Now, Mark, if you're still with us in the chat, let us know. Interested to hear. It's my understanding that most of the chemistries and solid state battery development would still involve lithium, but they'd be more energy dense. I could be wrong, though. Let us know, Mark, if you're with us. Battery expert you are. Uh, yeah, Tesla. All right. So the good news. I'm gonna bring the good news, and then Justice. To be fair, I'm gonna let you tell us why you think the lawsuit is a bunch of BS. Because honestly, I really respect your opinion, and I've never been a Tesla owner, so I'm gonna try to stay a little bit shy about that. The good news from Tesla this week is that they have said, or actually, it's rumors from a source. So let me clarify that. Rumors from a source have told the Wall Street Journal that Tesla is considering shipping hardware and equipment that it had planned to use for Tesla battery production in Germany all the way over to the United States because of the prospect of these new EV tax credits from the latest Inflation Reduction Act of 2022 changes. And there's a part of that bill that I had not really paid any attention to before. I should have. It's called the Advanced Manufacturing Production Tax Credit. This is pretty cool. So the Wall Street Journal speculates that according to their sources, Tesla would want to be bringing more battery production to the US because this new Advanced Manufacturing Production Tax Credit says you can manufacturers like Tesla in this case can get up to $35 per kilowatt hour for battery production. And then there's different tiers where like one tier is $10 per kilowatt hour of battery production done domestically. Tesla could be raking in that money. I mean, honestly, they already rake in those clean vehicle credits that other automakers have to pay
Yeah.
them for. So this would be just a more bankroll for Tesla. It might fund, maybe that would fund the $25,000 Tesla that we've now given up on. But yeah,
Well, yeah, they sort of put the kibosh on that. What, last week, right?
yeah. So one of the executives, let's see, what was his name? Mark Vaicha, Tesla VP of Investor Relations, told Goldman Sachs Tech Conference that the demand for the Model 3 and Model Y is so strong that they are not focusing on a cheaper model right now. I'm not really surprised at all. And I know that
No.
you joked that this is the least surprising news ever, but
Yeah,
it's
I mean, even Elon Musk said we have uh, so much on our plate right now. He said, actually, we have too much on our plate already to even bother to take that on right now.
yeah, starts with a C, ends with the Cybertruck. We'll see if they can maybe bring that around instead to fulfill the expectations of what hundreds of thousands of pre-orders.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, you want to talk about the lawsuit?
I mean, we can talk. How about you bring up the lawsuit and I'll tell you why it's total BS.
Okay. And yeah, I don't own a Tesla, so I'm going to shut up. But this Tesla lawsuit, Tesla is now facing a class action lawsuit over, quote, allegedly misleading the public regarding its autopilot, enhanced autopilot, and full self-driving capability technologies. Electrek reports that Tesla's approach of selling features that have yet to be fully developed and announcing timelines that always get missed, they think it was sure to bring about lawsuits. My opinion is simply all about how much you're paying for this because I've experienced it through test drives. I think Autopilot and FSD are definitely worth something, but I don't think they're worth over $5,000. I don't know. Anyways, that's it. They got a new lawsuit. Justice, what's your take?
It's FSDB, by the way,
Beta?
and the B is important,
Okay.
and that's where these lawsuits are coming out. Like, oh, they misrepresented. Only if you don't know what the word beta means
You're right. Okay.
did they misrepresent. And yeah, if you look on their on their website right now, and this has been up for a long time, this is not in response to the lawsuit. There's a lot of coming soon, and then they have a disclaimer. The currently enabled features require active driver supervision and do not make the vehicle autonomous. They've had that on their website for years. So people who are sleeping behind the wheel and getting in a car accident and then go, oh, well, Tesla said it was self-driving. No, they didn't.
Yeah,
No,
they
they
did.
didn't.
It's called full self-driving.
Beta. And there's a disclaimer that this is not fully autonomous yet, that you need. And, anyone who's driven them, if you've driven it, if you take your hands off the wheel, I think it's for a minute, might be 90 seconds. First, you get an alert and a vibration. Then you get a second one, and the car starts to slow down. And if you don't do anything, it'll stop and full self-driving will be turned off. There's lots of features in this. Now, people have gone along and invented devices to trick and fool
That's
the
dangerous.
vehicles.
Yeah.
And that's not Tesla's fault. That's people being stupid. And to me, that's what a lot of this is. It's just people being stupid.
The lawsuit also quotes the cases of Teslas driving into like emergency vehicles and stuff like that.
And at least two of them I know Tesla has taken full accountability for those, because that is a real issue. And that's, I don't know how to say it without sounding flippant, because it's not flippant. Those are really serious issues, but that's sort of what is going to happen when you're putting vehicles out onto the road. I know everyone's like, well, why don't they test it on the track? Well, they have.
They do, yeah.
All these autonomous vehicles have worked just fine on a closed track. So that part of it's done. You can't do more there. Now it has to be out in the real world to train it. I equate this all the time with a 16-year-old driver. You get a brand new 16-year-old and put them behind the wheel. Well, they're supposed to have a licensed driver in the vehicle with them most of the time, right? Well, and the reason for that is that 16-year-old's not ready yet. They still need to learn and be trained, even though they've taken the classes. So full self-driving and enhanced autopilot, that's where they are. They're a 16-year-old out in the world trying to figure things out.
Sorry, go ahead.
They need people behind the wheel paying attention to train it in the real world situation. You cannot duplicate real world situation on a track. You can't duplicate everything. Like, who knew that the emergency trucks across the street would be looked at as a billboard? Like, nobody could have anticipated that happening. So it needs to be in the world for you to figure that out, so there's growing pains there. But I don't think Tesla was only misleading if you didn't read.
Yeah, I guess in my opinion, I think two things would probably eliminate most of the lawsuit threats that we always hear about. I think if they changed the name from full self-driving, I personally feel that they should. I think that would be a big step in the right direction, because right here we just got full self-driving capability. That's a bit misleading. Yeah, it's a bit misleading right now. Future promises aside. And I also feel like if they simply let it transfer to future Tesla purchases, I would shut up about it, honestly, because I think full self-driving actual capability in, say, 2030, to me, that's worth maybe $10,000. I don't know. But if they could transfer it to future purchases, I feel like that would shut up a lot of these people who probably have plenty of money and don't need money from a lawsuit settlement, but they're fired up about this. I don't know. Make it transferable and think about that word choice, because that is misleading to people who may not follow EV stuff nearly as much as we do. They may not know that it... Go ahead.
If you pull that back up, what is that giant paragraph underneath that?
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, is the people who aren't going to read that crap.
So
they should.
So from any lawyer's point of view, and
yeah.
not to sound like a car dealer, but if you didn't read it, whose fault is that?
Yeah, I've read that before, yeah, but it's also still called this. I mean, I don't know. We can disagree, Justice. We don't have to think the same thing all the time. That's what makes the show so exciting. So exciting.
I never have a problem with people disagreeing with me.
Yeah. We need more of that in America, don't we?
we need more people to be okay with not having the same opinion. That is
Hmm.
for sure. That's for sure.
Yep, and I will end on a positive note before I have to go pick up my daughter from early dismissal at school. I've been impressed with Hyundai Group's, what do they call it? Highway Drive Assist. It's free. It comes with the vehicle, but of course that's factored into the cost of the vehicle and all that. It's basically like just normal autopilot. And I definitely have to pay attention, just like you would have to with Tesla autopilot, because there have been times where it turns off on a curvy road. It only works on interstates, but still in West Virginia, we got some tight curves on those roads. And I've been impressed, seriously impressed with the abilities of Highway Drive Assist from Hyundai. It does auto lane changes. Um, I mean, you can adjust various facets of how you're following the vehicle in front of you, and it adapts to the speed limit if you want it to, but I turned that off. And I just yeah,
Yeah.
so I can go under the speed limit.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah. That's why.
so that's my positive note is it'll be interesting to see how GM Super Cruise and Ford, what do they call Ford's Blue Cruise?
Blue Cruise, yeah.
Yeah, how all of those different competing technologies end up, because I'll be honest, they're clearly way behind Tesla. But are they just going to settle into a little comfortable niche of basically offering autopilot, and they're never even going to go after the full self-driving idea? I don't know. I feel like some of these have got to just kind of let Tesla dominate that realm, but we'll see.
Well, I think you're going to see a splinter off. I think Tesla is sort of an anomaly here. I think most autonomous vehicles aren't going to be meant for you to own and drive around. They're going to be meant for deliveries or for taxi services, things like that. And I don't think that you're going to get in a F-150 Lightning and expect it to be autonomous in the next 20 years.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's the way the market goes.
Yep. I bought my Ionic 5 never expecting it to be autonomous. I
Yeah.
know it's never going to be like a Tesla, but for my use case, that's all right.
I when I had my Model 3, the enhanced autopilot is what I had. I didn't have FSDB. That wasn't anything I was interested in. Even my enhanced autopilot, I rarely used because I am a control freak who just wants control of the vehicle. But
Mhm.
I'm also one who doesn't text and drive.
Yeah. Well, driving's fun, and for those of us who actually
Yeah.
like driving, yeah, it wasn't one of my priorities, but it's been a great show today, Justice. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Always happy to be here.
Yeah, and we'll be back Monday at some point in the next 2 weeks. So not this coming week, the week after that, we're having the Ionic guy from YouTube, the one-stop shop for all things Hyundai Ionic, Ionic 5, Ionic 6, etc. He's going to be on the show to talk just I don't know, whatever we want to talk about. We haven't even figured that out yet, but I'm excited for that. And we're also going to have the folks from the nonprofit Plug-in NC. So Learning Fast in the chat. North Carolina represent. Plug-in NC, a nonprofit that advocates for just learning about the EV lifestyle, making sure people know that you too can go electric if you want to. They're going to be on the show. We'll talk about what's going on in the Southeast in terms of electric vehicles. So that's going to be exciting. Not sure the date on that yet, but I'll keep you all updated. Make sure and head over to the Electric Vehicle Forum on joinyaa.com. I'm there every day. We've got 330 posts now. People just chatting all about EVs, whether they're experts or just newbies to it all, asking the simplest of questions or the most technical of questions. It's all there on the Electric Vehicle Forum. So yeah, we'll see you. And don't forget, at noon, we've got the Ray and Zach show. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, Justice.
Bye, guys.